The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. Thomas Reed sat in his office at the United Earth Defense Command, reviewing reports about the latest Mars colony expansion, when every screen in the room suddenly went dark. For a moment, he thought it was another power failure, a common enough occurrence given the strain on the grid from recent military exercises. Then the screens lit up with symbols he had never seen before. "Get me technical division now." He barked into his communicator, but before anyone could respond, the symbols began transforming into English text. The message was brief, but its implications would change human history forever. To the species designated as humans, your technological advancement has been noted. Submit to Imperial authority within one standard rotation of your planet, or face immediate extinction. This is not a negotiation. Imperial High Command, Galactic Empire. Reed's coffee cup slipped from his fingers, shattering on the floor. 20 years of military service hadn't prepared him for this moment. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it wasn't the one they had hoped for. Within hours, similar messages appeared on every digital display across Earth. Panic erupted in major cities. Stock markets crashed. Religious leaders called for peace, while military forces worldwide went to high alert. But amid the chaos, something unexpected happened. A small ship appeared in orbit around Earth's moon, broadcasting on all frequencies. Unlike the Imperial message, this transmission carried a different tone. The ship's pilot identified himself as Officer Williams, a human name he had chosen to make communication easier. He was a defector from the Empire's border security force. "I've watched your species," Williams transmitted. "You're different from the others. The Empire doesn't understand what they're walking into." The defector's ship was quickly escorted to a secure facility in the Nevada desert. Williams turned out to be a tall, blue-skinned humanoid with 4 arms and silver eyes. He brought with him something invaluable: detailed information about Imperial military capabilities. "They always do this," Williams explained to the assembled Earth military leadership. "Find developing civilizations, demand submission, then either accept their surrender or destroy them. It's worked for 1,000 years across 20,000 star systems." General Anna Carter, Earth's highest-ranking military officer, leaned forward. "Why help us?" Williams smiled, or at least made what seemed like a smile with his unusual facial features. "Because in all my years of service, I've never seen a species like yours. Most civilizations develop uniformly. Their technology, culture, and military thinking all follow predictable patterns. But humans," he gestured at the room full of leaders from different nations. "You're chaos incarnate." He pulled out a device that projected a holographic map of the galaxy. "The Empire's strength is its order, its precision, its unchanging protocols. But that's also its weakness. They've never faced a species that thinks like yours, that adapts like yours, that fights like yours." Reed studied the holographic display, noting the vast territory controlled by the Empire. "They have technology far beyond ours. How can we possibly resist?" Williams pointed to Earth's historical archives displayed on a nearby screen. "Because you've been fighting wars since before you invented the wheel. The Empire has fought the same way for 1,000 years. They'd forgotten how to adapt. But humans," he showed them footage of Earth's military exercises, "you still train for every scenario imaginable. You prepare for wars with weapons you don't even have yet. The Empire has no concept of this kind of thinking." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity was outnumbered, outgunned, and faced an enemy that had conquered thousands of worlds. But for the first time in Imperial history, they were also facing an opponent who had spent their entire history fighting, adapting, and overcoming superior forces. "We have one planetary rotation to respond," Reed said finally. "What do you suggest?" Williams displayed the Imperial fleet formations. "First, understand that they expect you to either submit or try to fight them conventionally. They have protocols for both scenarios. but they have no protocol for what you humans do best: the unexpected. General Carter stood up, her expression determined. Then let's show them something unexpected. Ladies and gentlemen, as of this moment, Earth is at war, and we're going to give the Empire a fight they'll never forget. The warning had been delivered, but instead of running, humanity was about to teach the galaxy a lesson about underestimating the human spirit. The diplomatic ship Earth's Hope carried humanity's response to the Empire. Not submission. That was never really an option, but an offer of peaceful coexistence. Captain James Walker stood on the bridge, watching as his small fleet of 5 ships approached the Imperial border station. "They're massive," his first officer whispered. She was right. The Imperial station looked like a floating city, dwarfing Earth's ships. Golden spires stretched for miles, and thousands of smaller vessels moved around it like bees around a hive. "Remember the plan," Walker said to his crew. "We show them our message, demonstrate our willingness to talk, and if things go wrong..." He didn't finish the sentence. They all knew the backup plan. The Imperial station's communication system crackled to life. "Unregistered vessels, you have entered Imperial space. Prepare for scanning." A blue light washed over their ships. Walker took a deep breath, remembering William's warning about Imperial protocols. The defector had been right about everything so far. Scanning complete. Species identified. Human. Status: unregistered. Standard protocol engaged. Walker's tactical officer suddenly shouted, "Energy spike. They're powering weapons. But we haven't even delivered our message." Walker grabbed the communication controls. "Imperial Station, this is Captain James Walker of Earth. We come in peace to discuss." The first shot cut through one of their escort ships like paper. No warning, no further communication. The Empire had decided to skip the diplomacy entirely. "Evasive maneuvers," Walker ordered. "Execute fallback protocol Alpha." This was where humanity's preparation paid off. While the Empire expected their targets to either flee in panic or attempt a suicidal charge, Earth's ships did neither. Instead, they split into practiced formations, using maneuvers developed from centuries of naval warfare. "Release the drones," Walker commanded. Hundreds of small, unmanned vessels burst from the cargo holds of Earth's ships. The Empire's targeting systems, used to dealing with large vessels, struggled to track the tiny drones. Each one carried a small but powerful explosive charge, technology that Williams had helped them modify to penetrate Imperial shields. "They're launching fighters," his tactical officer reported. "At least 300 of them." Walker smiled grimly. Just as Williams predicted. Execute Phase 2. The drones suddenly changed direction, heading straight for the Imperial fighter squadrons. On Earth, drone warfare had evolved over decades. The Empire, which had never needed such tactics, had no defense against the swarm of AI-controlled kamikaze units. Explosions lit up space as dozens of Imperial fighters were destroyed. The remaining Earth ships used the chaos to make their escape, jumping to light speed using coordinates Williams had provided. "Status report," Walker demanded once they were safe. "We lost the Madison and the Phoenix," his first officer reported. "The other 3 ships made it out. 60% of our drone force was destroyed, but they took down nearly half of their fighter squadron." Walker nodded grimly. The losses hurt, but they had learned something invaluable. The Empire could bleed. Back on Earth, the battle footage was analyzed by military commanders worldwide. General Carter called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. "The Empire didn't even let us talk," Reed said, watching the replay. "They went straight to elimination protocol." "Yes," Williams confirmed. "But look what happened next." He pointed to the battle analysis. "Your ships survived an encounter that should have been impossible. The Empire lost more fighters in 5 minutes than they have in the last 50 years of subjugating primitive worlds." General Carter stood up. "Because they've forgotten what it's like to face an enemy that can actually fight back. They're used to overwhelming force against inferior opponents. They have no doctrine for fighting equals. Not equals, Williams corrected. Your technology is still far behind theirs. But your tactics, your adaptability. I've never seen anything like those drones. The Empire has no concept of unmanned warfare. They consider it beneath them. Reed studied the casualty reports. We lost good people today, but we proved something important. The Empire isn't invincible. They can be hurt. They can be surprised. And most importantly, they can be beaten. The real question, Carter said, is what they'll do next. This has to be the first time a primitive species has bloodied their nose. Williams looked troubled. They'll escalate. Significantly, the Empire cannot tolerate any challenge to their power. They'll send a full battle fleet next. Good, Carter replied, surprising everyone. Because now we know their weaknesses, and while they're preparing their big, impressive fleet, she gestured to the screen showing weapons factories and shipyards all around Earth springing into action. We'll be getting ready to show them how humans really fight. The first battle was over. The real war was about to begin. The Imperial battle fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system exactly as Williams had predicted. 500 massive warships, each one capable of destroying a small country, emerged from light speed in perfect formation. Admiral Mary Stone watched them from her command center, hidden inside an asteroid near Jupiter. The Empire's ships looked like gleaming silver arrows, beautiful and deadly. Right on schedule, she said. All units, commence Operation Scattered Thunder. Across the solar system, humanity's defense plan sprang into action. But it wasn't what the Empire expected to find. There was no unified fleet waiting to face them, no massive space stations guarding Earth. Instead, thousands of smaller ships and stations were scattered throughout the asteroid belts and among the moons of the outer planets. The Imperial Fleet Commander's message boomed across all frequencies. Primitive species, you have demonstrated hostility against the Empire. Prepare for extinction. Stone smiled grimly. Let's show them what primitive looks like. The battle began exactly as the Empire planned. Their fleet moving forward in textbook formation, energy weapons charging. What they didn't expect was for every asteroid in their path to suddenly reveal itself as a disguised missile platform. First wave, launch. Stone commanded. Thousands of missiles burst from their rocky hiding places. The Empire's ships easily blocked them with their advanced shields, exactly as expected. They're not even breaking formation. Stone's tactical officer reported. Just like Williams said, they never changed their tactics. Second wave. Commence Operation Trojan. The destroyed missiles left clouds of debris, which the Imperial ships plowed through without concern. Their shields could handle any physical impact, but they weren't prepared for what was hidden inside the debris. Millions of microscopic robots, each one carrying a fragment of a computer virus Williams had helped develop. The tiny machines attached themselves to the Imperial ships' hulls, using the energy from the shields themselves to power up. Then they began their work. Multiple Imperial ships reporting shield fluctuations, the tactical officer announced with satisfaction. They're trying to adapt their frequencies, but our nanobots are adapting faster. Stone nodded. Begin Phase 3. Human ships emerged from hiding places across the solar system, behind moons, inside gas clouds, even from underground bases on Mars. But instead of engaging in direct combat, they executed hit-and-run attacks, striking from multiple directions before disappearing again. The Imperial fleet's perfect formation began to break apart as ships turned to face threats from all directions. Their traditional battle doctrine required them to maintain formation, but that was impossible when the enemy refused to fight conventionally. Their communication is starting to break down, reported the communications officer. The virus is working. The Empire's ships began firing at shadows, their coordinated defense falling into chaos. They had never faced an enemy that fought like this. Hidden, scattered, striking from all directions with different tactics. They're launching fighters, Stone observed. right into our trap. The Imperial fighter squadrons flew straight into clouds of automated drones, but these weren't the same drones from the first battle. Humanity had already adapted their designs based on that experience. These drones were smaller, faster, and carried experimental weapons designed to overload Imperial shields. 60 Imperial fighters destroyed, now 100. They're recalling their fighter squadrons, the tactical officer reported with barely contained excitement. The Imperial fleet's perfect formation had dissolved into small groups of ships trying to protect each other. Their communications were compromised, their fighters were ineffective, and their shields were failing. Final phase, Stone ordered. All units, execute Operation Thunderbolt. The hidden human fleet emerged one final time, but now they targeted specific ships identified as having the weakest shields. Concentrated fire from multiple directions overwhelmed the compromised defenses. For the first time in centuries, Imperial warships began to fall. They're retreating, someone shouted as the Imperial ships began jumping to light speed. They're actually retreating. Admiral Stone watched the massive fleet flee, leaving behind dozens of destroyed ships. Send word to Earth. Tell them the Empire's first wave has failed. But be clear, this was just a test. They'll be back, and next time, they'll be ready for these tactics. Williams, who had been quietly observing from a corner of the command center, spoke up. You don't understand. They'll never be fully ready. The Empire's greatest weakness is its belief in its own superiority. They'll blame this defeat on faulty intelligence, on equipment malfunction, on anything except the truth, that a primitive species outsmarted them. Stone turned to face her crew. Then we'll keep outsmarting them. Earth has been fighting wars since before we had electricity. The Empire thinks technology is everything. We know better. We know that innovation, adaptation, and determination matter more than having the biggest ships. She looked at the tactical display, where the remnants of the Imperial fleet were disappearing into light speed. The Empire just made their biggest mistake, she said. They gave humanity a reason to unite, and they showed us that they can be beaten. Now the real war begins. Dr. Robert Gray hadn't slept in 3 days. Empty coffee cups littered his lab at the Global Defense Research Center, but he barely noticed them. His eyes were fixed on the holographic display, showing the captured Imperial shield technology. There, he muttered, pointing at a pattern in the energy flow. That's not a design feature. That's a mistake they never fixed. The Empire's shields were perfect, too perfect. They had used the same design for centuries, refining it to its purest form. But that was exactly the problem. The Empire had optimized their technology for perfect conditions, never considering that perfection itself could be a weakness. A junior researcher rushed into the lab. Dr. Gray, the test results from Australia are in. Gray grabbed the tablet, his tired eyes suddenly alert. On the screen, footage showed a small drone firing what looked like an ordinary missile at an Imperial shield they had recreated. The missile didn't explode on impact. Instead, it released a burst of chaotic energy patterns. The shield didn't fail. It overloaded. Like a circuit breaker hitting its limit, the perfect energy symmetry of the Imperial shield couldn't handle deliberate imperfection. Get me General Carter, Gray said, already reaching for his phone. Tell her Project Chaos is ready. Across the planet, other breakthroughs were happening. In underground factories, engineers were adapting World War II submarine tactics to space warfare. In orbital laboratories, scientists were reverse engineering Imperial communication systems. Every scrap of captured technology was being studied, not to copy it, but to find its weaknesses. Williams watched all this with growing amazement. He stood in a testing facility in the Mojave Desert, watching humans turn centuries-old warfare concepts into modern space combat techniques. You're not just copying our technology, he said to General Carter as they observed the test firing. You're making it worse. On purpose. Carter nodded. The Empire's technology is too perfect, too refined. They'd forgotten that sometimes imperfection is an advantage. On the test range, a modified fighter launched what looked like a cloud of space junk at a target protected by Imperial shields. The junk cloud contained thousands of tiny, crude devices that created overlapping interference patterns. The shield, designed to handle powerful, precise energy weapons, couldn't adapt to the chaotic assault. It collapsed. "Your ships use quantum-locked targeting systems," Carter explained. "Ours now use deliberately randomized firing patterns. Your shields expect perfect energy wavelengths. We're giving them mathematical chaos." In orbit, the first human ships equipped with the new chaos technology were rolling out of makeshift shipyards. They looked crude compared to Imperial vessels, a mix of stolen technology and human innovation that would have made any Imperial engineer cringe. Admiral Stone toured one of the new ships, running her hand along a corridor wall. "It's not pretty," she admitted, "but it doesn't need to be. We're not trying to impress anyone. We're trying to survive." The ship's weapons weren't the precisely engineered energy cannons of the Empire. Instead, they fired swarms of small, semi-guided projectiles that created unpredictable patterns. The shield technology wasn't the perfect bubble of Imperial design, but a layered defense that could sacrifice outer layers to preserve the core. "The Empire has forgotten something fundamental about warfare," Stone told her crew during their first briefing. "They think combat is about superiority, having the biggest ships, the strongest weapons, the most perfect shields. But Earth's military history teaches us differently. Combat is about adaptation, about finding weaknesses, about turning an enemy's strength against them." Back in his lab, Dr. Gray finally allowed himself to sleep. On his screen, the results of the latest tests glowed green. They had found not just one way to defeat Imperial technology, but dozens, each one based on a simple principle: the Empire's greatest strength, their technological perfection, could become their greatest weakness. "We're ready," he told General Carter over the phone before collapsing into his chair. "The next time they come, they'll face something they've never seen before. An enemy that doesn't try to match their perfection, but instead embraces chaos as a weapon." Carter ended the call and looked out her window at the ships rising from Earth's surface. They weren't beautiful like Imperial vessels. They were ugly, asymmetrical, and looked like they had been built from spare parts, because they had been. But they carried humanity's greatest weapons: innovation, adaptability, and the willingness to break every rule of proper warfare. The Empire had spent centuries perfecting their technology. Humanity had spent centuries learning how to break things that were supposed to be perfect. The next battle would show which approach was better. The Imperial Grand Fleet emerged from light speed between Saturn and Jupiter. 2,000 warships, the largest fleet ever assembled in Imperial history, filled the space between the planets. Their golden hulls reflected the distant sunlight, creating an artificial sunrise in the outer solar system. Admiral Stone watched from the bridge of her flagship, the Defiance. The ship, like all of Earth's new vessels, looked nothing like its Imperial counterparts. Its hull was dark and rough, covered in seemingly random patterns that were actually carefully designed to disrupt Imperial targeting systems. "They brought their whole fleet," Williams said, standing beside her. "The Empire is done playing games." Stone nodded. "Good. Neither are we." She opened a channel to all Earth forces. "All units, commence Operation Dark Storm." Around Jupiter's moons, hundreds of hidden human ships powered up. But the real surprise wasn't the ships. It was Jupiter itself. For months, humanity had been hiding technology in the gas giant storms, using the planet's natural chaos to mask their preparations. The Imperial Fleet Commander's voice boomed across space. "Primitive species, you have been given multiple chances to submit. Your extinction is now." The message cut off as Earth launched its first attack, not with ships or weapons, but with Jupiter itself. Hidden generators in the planet's atmosphere activated, turning the giant storm known as the Great Red Spot into a weapon. Massive electromagnetic pulses, amplified by the storm, washed over the perfectly ordered Imperial formation. Imperial ships reporting shield fluctuations. Stone's tactical officer called out, "The chaotic energy patterns are working." The Imperial fleet's perfect formation began to waver. Their shields, designed to handle precise energy weapons, struggled against the random patterns created by Jupiter's storms. But this was just the beginning. "Launch the swarm," Stone ordered. From bases hidden on Jupiter's moons, thousands of small, unmanned ships emerged. They weren't the elegant fighters of the Empire, but rough, simple drones designed for one purpose: chaos. Each carried Dr. Gray's new weapons, devices that didn't try to overpower Imperial shields, but instead confused them with mathematical nonsense. The Imperial fleet responded as expected, with precise, coordinated volleys of energy weapons. But Earth's ships were already moving in patterns developed from centuries of atmospheric combat, using Jupiter's gravity to perform maneuvers that Imperial ships never considered possible. "They're launching fighters," Williams reported. "Standard response protocol." Stone smiled. "Activate the minefields." The space between Jupiter's moons lit up. What looked like debris fields were actually carefully placed weapon platforms. As Imperial fighters flew through them, they encountered not direct attacks, but waves of conflicting energy patterns that played havoc with their perfect systems. "Multiple Imperial ships breaking formation," the tactical officer reported. "Their communication network is failing." The Empire's greatest strength, their unity and coordination, was becoming their weakness. As their perfect formation broke apart, individual ship commanders had to make decisions they weren't trained for. Their rigid command structure began to collapse. Stone watched as the battlefield dissolved into chaos, exactly as planned. Begin Phase 3. Earth's main fleet emerged from hiding, but not as a single unit. Instead, they attacked in small, independent groups, using tactics developed from every war humanity had ever fought. Some ships acted like old submarine wolf packs. Others used hit-and-run attacks inspired by ancient cavalry tactics. Each group operated independently, adapting to local conditions rather than following the central plan. The Imperial fleet, trying to respond to dozens of different attack styles simultaneously, couldn't maintain their defensive coordination. Ships that tried to help each other ended up interfering with their allies' shield harmonics. "Imperial flagship is changing position," Williams announced, surprise in his voice. They're falling back." Stone leaned forward. "All units, focus fire on their command ships. Don't let them regroup." The battle raged for hours. Imperial ships, each one far more powerful than its human counterparts, found themselves overwhelmed not by superior force, but by superior adaptation. Their perfect technology proved vulnerable to imperfect attacks. Their unified strategy fell apart against multiple independent threats. Finally, after losing hundreds of ships to what they considered inferior technology, the Imperial fleet did something unprecedented. They retreated in disorder, abandoning their perfect formation to flee individually. As the Imperial ships vanished into light speed, cheers erupted across the human fleet. But Stone remained focused on her tactical display. "This isn't over," she said. "We've just proved something the Empire didn't think was possible. They can lose. Their response will be even more extreme." Williams nodded gravely. "The Empire has never faced defeat on this scale. They'll be back, with everything they have." "Let them come," Stone replied. "Earth has never been more ready. We've learned how to beat their perfect technology with imperfect weapons. Now we'll teach them why humanity has survived every threat we've ever faced. We never stop adapting, and we never give up." The Battle of Jupiter was over, but the real war was just beginning. The Imperial High Council chamber had never seen such disorder. The massive golden hall, designed to showcase the Empire's power and unity, now echoed with angry voices. News of the defeat at Jupiter had spread across the galaxy, and the consequences were beyond anything the Council had imagined. High Commander Marcus, the Empire's supreme military leader, stood before the Council, his perfect posture failing to hide his discomfort. "The humans didn't just defeat our fleet," he reported. "They made us look foolish. Our own colonies are beginning to question our power." The council chamber's holographic displays showed scenes from across the Empire. On a dozen worlds, subjected species were rising up, inspired by humanity's success. Ships that had faithfully served the Empire for centuries were breaking formation, their commanders refusing orders for the first time in Imperial history. "Look at what they've done," one council member shouted, pointing to footage from the Battle of Jupiter. "They turned our greatest weapons against us. They made our perfect technology look outdated." In the lower levels of the Imperial capital, Commander John Smith, formerly known by his Imperial designation, watched the chaos with satisfaction. Like Williams, he had defected to humanity's side, and now led a growing network of Imperial officers who questioned the old ways. "The humans did more than defeat our ships," he told his fellow rebels. "They defeated our certainty. For 1,000 years, we believed our way was perfect. Now we know better." Reports kept flowing in from across the Empire. On the industrial world of New Terra, factory workers were modifying Imperial technology using human principles. The perfectly ordered production lines were being replaced with flexible, adaptable systems. In the Imperial Fleet Academy, young officers secretly studied Earth's military history. They were fascinated by concepts their training had never covered: guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics, adaptive strategy. Some even dared to suggest that the Empire's military doctrine needed to change. High Commander Marcus received another shocking report. 3 of his best fleet commanders had refused to attack Earth. "The humans have shown us a better way," they wrote in their resignation. "We won't fight an enemy who could be our greatest teacher." The Empire's response was predictable, and exactly what the rebels expected. The High Council ordered an immediate purge of contaminated elements within the military. But this only spread the rebellion faster. "Don't they see?" Smith asked during a secret meeting of rebel leaders. "Every time they respond with rigid control, they prove the humans right. The Empire's greatest strength, its unchanging order, has become its greatest weakness." In distant star systems, Imperial governors watched their perfect worlds begin to change. Subjected species, inspired by Earth's example, began developing their own chaotic technology. The Empire's standardized systems faced a growing wave of unpredictable adaptive challenges. On a frontier world, an Imperial commander named Diana watched her crew modify their ships using human principles. She should have reported them for treason. Instead, she found herself fascinated by their innovations. "The humans didn't just show us new technology," she told her trusted officers. "They showed us new ways of thinking. Why did we never question our own perfection?" Back in the council chamber, the debate reached a breaking point. Half the council demanded immediate, overwhelming force against Earth. The other half argued for a completely new approach. "We've lost more ships fighting humans than in the last 500 years of expansion," one council member argued. "Perhaps it's time we considered something unthinkable, learning from them instead of trying to destroy them." The High Council's leader, Supreme Commander Roland, stood to restore order. But for the first time in Imperial history, the council members didn't fall silent at his gesture. "The Empire faces a choice," he said gravely. "We can continue our perfect ways and watch our empire crumble, or we can learn to adapt. The humans have taught us a harsh lesson about the price of perfection." Across the galaxy, the Empire's perfect order was dissolving. But in its place, something new was emerging, an understanding that adaptation, innovation, and even chaos had their own kind of strength. Smith watched the reports flood in and smiled. "The humans didn't just resist our invasion," he told his fellow rebels. "They showed us a better way to live. The real question is, are we brave enough to learn?" As the Empire's internal conflicts grew, Earth prepared for what everyone knew was coming. One final, massive battle that would decide not just humanity's fate, but the future of the entire galaxy. The final battle didn't happen where the Empire expected. Instead of defending Earth, Humanity brought the fight to the Imperial capital itself. Admiral Stone's fleet emerged from light speed directly above the Empire's throne world, but they weren't alone. Allied ships checking in, her communications officer reported with pride. Rebel Imperial forces under Commander Smith reporting ready. Free Species fleet from the outer colonies standing by. Earth's main battle group in position. Stone looked at her tactical display. Hundreds of Imperial ships had defected to their side, their perfect golden hulls now modified with human-inspired technology. Alongside them, vessels from dozens of formerly subjugated species formed a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Empire called us primitive, Stone broadcast to all ships. Today we show them that adaptation is stronger than perfection. All units, commence Operation Freedom's Dawn. The Empire's home fleet responded exactly as their doctrine demanded, forming a perfect defensive sphere around their capital. But this was no longer the advantage it had once been. They haven't learned, Williams observed from his station. Even after everything, they still cling to their old ways. Stone nodded. Then let's give them one final lesson. All ships, execute random pattern alpha. The combined fleet split apart, using tactics that would have seemed insane by Imperial standards. Some ships dove into the atmosphere of the throne world, using its gravity to perform maneuvers that Imperial ships couldn't match. Others formed small, independent groups that attacked from multiple angles, each using different strategies. The Imperial defenders tried to maintain their perfect formation, but they faced too many different threats. Ships using Earth tactics attacked their flanks. Vessels commanded by freed species introduced completely new battle strategies. Even their own rebel ships turned Imperial doctrine against them. Their formation is breaking, Tactical reported. They can't coordinate against so many different attack styles. Stone watched as the Empire's defensive sphere collapsed into chaos. Begin Phase 2. Commander Smith, you have the honor. Smith's rebel ships, led by former Imperial officers who understood both sides of the war, struck at the Empire's command and control centers. They knew exactly where to hit to disrupt the rigid Imperial command structure. The battle raged across the throne world's orbit. Imperial ships, each one individually powerful, found themselves overwhelmed by enemies who refused to fight according to the proper rules of warfare. The rebel fleet didn't try to match the Empire's technology. They simply made it irrelevant. Imperial High Command is requesting communication, the comm officer announced, surprise evident in his voice. Stone straightened in her chair. Put them through to all ships. Let everyone hear this. The holographic image of Supreme Commander Roland appeared. His perfect uniform was wrinkled, his composed expression strained. You have. He paused, seemingly struggling with the words. You have demonstrated superior capability. Not superior, Stone replied. Different. We never wanted to destroy the Empire. We wanted to show you a better way. Roland's image flickered as explosions lit up the space around his command center. The Empire has stood unchanged for 1,000 years. You suggest we should abandon our perfection. We suggest you should embrace change, Stone answered. Look at your own people fighting alongside us. They haven't abandoned Imperial strength. They've added human adaptability to it. Imagine what we could accomplish together. The Supreme Commander was silent for a long moment. Around him, the battle continued to turn against the Empire's forces. Their perfect tactics failed against unpredictable attacks. Their flawless technology struggled against improvised weapons. Perhaps, Roland said finally, it is time for the Empire to learn a new way. All Imperial forces, stand down. Cheers erupted across the combined fleet as Imperial ships powered down their weapons. The war was over, but its impact was just beginning. In the years that followed, the galaxy underwent changes that would have once seemed impossible. The Empire didn't end, but it transformed. Imperial technology merged with human innovation, creating new possibilities that neither civilization could have achieved alone. We gave them chaos, Stone told her crew during the victory celebration. But they gave us order. Together, we found a balance. The Empire's warning to humanity, run or face extinction, had led to something unprecedented. A galaxy where perfection and adaptation, order and innovation, could coexist and thrive. And it all began because humanity refused to run.